Hi, I'm Alicia, entirely psyched, and I am going to talk to you today about supporting students with inattention and hyperactivity challenges. This is guidance for parents and teachers on addressing inattention and hyperactivity in students and children. I have a personal connection to this topic, having just been diagnosed with ADHD. It's something I significantly struggled with all throughout school and kind of went under the radar because my symptoms had more to do with the inattention part. And I was a high performer in general, but struggled significantly. And it hit me social emotionally because I struggled and kind of internalized those challenges. So, in addition to the personal connection, professionally, I have been in education since 2009. I started as a special education aide working with students with different challenges and IEPs, then went into teaching middle school English. And from there, I decided to change things up and become a school psychologist. So I work in a much more school wide and system wide realm, also assessing students, supporting teachers, and supporting schools as a whole. But this topic, like I said, is something that's very personal to me, and I'm very professionally passionate about providing students and families with support. So, just a quick introduction to inattention and hyperactivity. Inattention and hyperactivity are common challenges that many students face, impacting their ability to learn and interact effectively in the classroom. Understanding these challenges is crucial for both the teacher and parent to provide the appropriate support and strategies needed for student success. And a lot of times we take this for granted, but if a student's not able to focus and pay attention, they're not going to be able to retain information. And what maybe started as an issue with inattention and focus does become a learning problem because they're missing out on instruction and they're not gaining the important information needed to perform. A lot of times, students with inattention and focus challenges and even hyperactivity have challenges with peers for different reasons. It might be the impulsivity, they're agitating or causing disruptive challenges. And sometimes peers do not want to work with them collaboratively. So it does cause not only learning challenges and performance in the classroom, but social emotional challenges and communal challenges engaging with peers and adults. Understanding inattention and hyperactivity. So, inattention refers to difficulties in sustaining focus and attention, while hyperactivity involves excessive movement and impulsivity. These challenges often stem from neurological factors, environmental influences, and learning differences, which can significantly impact a student's academic and social success. So, when looking at neurological factors, sometimes this means things that are inherited or different challenges that can be diagnosed by a doctor, for example, ADHD, environmental influences. This might be something that is temporary in nature and maybe not necessarily a diagnosis. So, if a student is undergoing some environmental challenges or trauma, this can sometimes show up similar to characteristics of ADHD, but it really depends on whether or not it's been seen over a long period of time and something that's not just temporary in nature. So that really has to be evaluated by a doctor to determine if it's a disability or not. Signs and symptoms in students. So these are different things that teachers and parents can look out for that they might see in their child. Difficulty maintaining attention, impulsive actions and comments, constantly moving or fidgeting, difficulty following multi-step directions or instructions, and frequent distraction from tasks. Now, some cases are more obvious than others. I mean, I've seen the wide range of different cases with students, and the more extreme cases often, are like the squeaky wheel that gets the most attention. For myself, when I was in school, I was very quiet, very shy, and wanted to perform well, so I masked. And so sometimes you'll see a few of these things, but not very much. For example, I maybe had some difficulty following multi-step directions and difficulty maintaining attention and distraction. So maybe 3 out of the 5 things here but I hid it very easily and did not want to draw attention to it. So while, yes, you're going to see some very obvious cases, some of the less obvious cases, you might want to look out for lower grades, a little bit of challenges in performance, and ask questions of parents. When you're connecting with families, you do want to look out for different things for the students who might go under the radar. Academic impact. So, impact on learning and behavior. Students with inattention and hyperactivity often experience significant academic challenges, including lower grades, incomplete assignments, which can affect their overall learning progress and self-esteem. Like I said before, sometimes this might start out as just a behavioral challenge or inattention challenge, and then it becomes a learning difficulty because there's missed instruction, they're distracted, they're not in the classroom, they're not retaining that information. So, impact on behavior. Behaviorally, students may exhibit disruptive actions in the classroom, leading to conflicts with peers and teachers. They may also face difficulties in social interactions, making it harder to form friendships and work collaboratively with others. I kind of explained this before, that sometimes it makes it very difficult for peers to connect with these students because, ultimately, kids want to do well. They want to perform well. They want to succeed. And if they have a student that's like kind of interrupting that process, then they might isolate or just remove themselves from that student, and that isolates the student with these challenges. Creating a supportive classroom environment. So this is kind of for teachers to look at implementing strategies to foster attention and engagement among students with inattention and hyperactivity challenges. First, establish clear routines and rules. This is huge, not only for students with ADHD and autism. This is very important for those students, but all students in the classroom. For teachers, establishing clear rules and routines and sticking to them, being consistent, is huge. That had a lot to do with my success as a middle school English teacher. Set consistent expectations to create a structured learning environment. I had the same routine when students walked in the classroom every day, and they knew what to expect. They wanted to do well. They did. They succeeded in that. And then when I brought in new information, it was just part of the routine, and they knew that at the end they would be able to follow those directions and succeed. Use visual aids and reminders. Utilize charts, diagrams, and cues to enhance comprehension and retention. I am personally a very visual learner, and from what I understand, a lot of students with inattention focus challenges, including students with ADHD, tend to be visual learners. And having multimodal instruction, things that are not only verbalized but visually presented, is huge. Not only as a reminder, because sometimes students kind of stray off, daydream, go in their mind, but having that reinforced in different ways is very helpful. Provide a quiet space for focus. Designate an area in the classroom where students can retreat to minimize distractions. A lot of times in IEPs with students with inattention focus issues, we say an alternate setting. If students are lucky, they're able to remove themselves and go to another classroom, take a break, do an assignment in a quiet space. That is not always possible. So sometimes teachers have to create that quiet space for focus and a break in their own classrooms. And it's proven to be quite successful in a lot of cases. Incorporate movement breaks. Integrate short physical activities throughout the day to help students re-energize. In my time as a middle school teacher, we had a group come and provide yoga and movement, and middle school students were a little self-conscious about doing that, but in elementary, I've seen it be very helpful for students to have that short movement break, get that energy out, kind of get those wiggles out, and then come back where they have to sit and really focus and sit still to learn. Strategies for teachers. Positive reinforcement techniques. Positive reinforcement is big because a lot of times students with ADHD and attention focus issues have a history of getting a lot of negative attention for not being able to always follow the rules. Like, they need to move, they need to do things that maybe are disruptive to the classroom environment. And so Utilizing their different strengths and using positive ways to have them engage effectively in the classroom is important for their self-esteem and success in the classroom. Breaking tasks down. So this is big in IEPs for students who are diagnosed and have significant challenges. Chunking assignments into smaller parts, because a lot of times when a student is presented with a huge assignment with a lot of steps and a lot of things to do, they become overwhelmed. They're not able to start because there's this stress of performing or even not knowing where to get started because everything is just all too much. So chunking a larger assignment into smaller pieces, having maybe do one or two tasks at a time, and then giving them the rest of it in different pieces. Flexible seating options. This is also an accommodation we provide in IEPs. Now, it's not necessarily letting them choose where they get to sit, because a lot of times they'll make the wrong choice and sit next to their friends or distract others, but setting them up for success by putting them, in the front to the side or next to another peer who is more focused and able to rein them in and not add to those easily distractible moments. Individualized instruction methods. So this might mean having students provide only a few responses to demonstrate understanding, or giving half of the work, but there's different ways to support students individually based on their own personal needs. And I know this is not always possible in a classroom with 25 to 30 students, but it makes a world of difference if you get to know students at the beginning of the year and like, oh, this Johnny likes trains, so I'm going to use trains to kind of explain this concept with him when I kind of work with him one-on-one and check in with him. But yeah, like I said, it's not always easy to do that, but taking those little opportunities to get know your students a little bit better can make a world of difference in how you approach their learning and access, how their mind works. Collaborating with parents. Effective collaboration between teachers and parents is crucial for supporting students with inattention and hyperactivity challenges. This process ensures consistency in strategies and reinforces learning. There's a lot of times, we want to be on the same team, work collaboratively together, because what might work in the home setting can be utilized and practiced in the school setting, or vice versa. Like, we can share with parents what is working and what routines we have in the classroom that can be carried over and reinforced in the home setting. So there's consistency. The student gets to practice in the home and the school, and it only makes it easier for that student to perform well when they get in school. So regular communication with parents, establish consistent channels for sharing updates on student progress and behavior, fostering a partnership that enhances student support, and making sure that it's not just negative remarks and comments that are shared with parents, is not just when the student is in trouble or not paying attention or focused, but sharing those wins and those positive moments with parents as well. Share strategies that work at school. Like I said, provide parents with effective techniques and approaches that have been successful in the classroom, allowing for reinforcement at home. It only strengthens that connection and leads to student success. Encourage parental involvement in learning. Involve parents in the child's educational journey through activities that support learning and development, strengthening the home to school connection. And this is, again, not always possible, because sometimes in different communities, parents are working 2 or 3 jobs, and they just don't have the time. But there are small little ways that you can make sure that parents are engaged and connected, and just making sure you do reach out and connect at least, on a routine basis, a couple times a year. Home strategies for support. So now here we're reaching out to parents to kind of connect that school home system to lead to student success. Maintain consistent daily schedules. Not only at school, it's important at home that there is consistency and a child knows the routine and they're able to kind of work independently and successfully with things that they can count on. If the home is more chaotic and there's a lot of unexpected things, it can lead to stress, anxiety, and distractions that not only happen in the home setting, but will bleed into the school setting as well. Incorporate engaging learning activities. Not so it's important to have your child engaged or participating in activities that require attention and focus at home as well. Set clear expectations and rules. This is just as important in the home as it is in the school setting. Limit screen time effectively. Uh, Again, this is not always possible or easy for all homes and parents, but screen time is kind of where students are provided with just constant stimulation, and their dopamine levels are significantly impacted by this. We need to have dopamine provided in different constructive ways where students are utilizing problem solving, because when they're getting screen time and just constant social media, there's no thought or deep connection to what they're doing. They're just getting information passively. And this is not as helpful as constructive activities where they're utilizing problem solving and expanding their different skills in their brain that would help them in school and future jobs. Encourage physical activity breaks. This is easier at home than the school, and so just going for a walk, participating in a sport, even doing little jumping jacks, whatever you can do, and can get them physically energized. And finally, encouraging positive behavior. Reinforcing positive behavior is crucial for students with inattention and hyperactivity challenges. By focusing on praise and recognition, we can create a more supportive environment that promotes self-esteem and encourages good behavior. I am going to have a different video on growth mindset, which is huge here. Making sure that you reinforce the idea that it is okay to make mistakes. It is definitely a part of learning. Focusing on a child's strengths and their positive aspects, and using those to strengthen and reinforce those areas of problem solving and different challenges are huge. And getting to know children and connecting with them on a personal basis is an easy way to do that. But growth mindset is something that is sometimes taken for granted because you want your students to succeed. You want your child to be successful in life and in school. But in order to do that, a lot of times we forget that it involves what are perceived as failures or making mistakes. It's part of learning. And it is the working through that and trying again and persevering that is what is so important in learning, and what we need to focus on when we're praising students. Like, oh, you tried so hard. That's great. And I'm going to provide in my video that I'm talking about a chart of different words and phrases to avoid and different words and phrases to use and utilize. And it might seem very simple, but something as simple as saying, oh, you're so smart, can be kind of detrimental to a student and encourage fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Again, I'll go into detail in my next video on the difference between those two. Resources for further support. Assessing relevant resources is crucial for parents and teachers to actively support students with inattention and hyperactivity challenges. So books, I have links that I'm going to provide in the description of the video. But checking out different books at the library or on Amazon that talk about inattention and focus challenges. There's books specifically for parents, books specifically for teachers, and even books that are geared towards children in talking about how to feel and what to do if they have these challenges. There's websites. I recommend these 3 websites here. The links are going to be in the description of the video. And I will also provide different resources if you subscribe. I email those. But the CDC has information on attention focus challenges, CHADD, and Attitude Magazine. But you can always Google and find websites that you think are most beneficial. These are free resources. 5 local support groups, community options for ongoing support. I am not going to provide local options because I'm here in Oakland, East Bay Area in California. But depending on where you are, you can Google local support groups for children with ADHD or even parent groups. I highly encourage you to connect with the community because oftentimes there are parents and educators who have done their own research based on their own experiences. And annual workshops. So again, this is kind of a thing you want to look up for yourself to find out what workshops are near you. There are national resources, state resources, but a lot of times these are helpful to connect with the community and figure out what things you can do to support children with inattention and focus challenges. So that is it for today. I hope this was helpful in how to support students with inattention hyperactivity challenges, and look out for the next video on growth mindset.